And we'll welcome everyone and turn it over to Beverly and Shauna.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We'll introduce ourselves in a second, but I just want to make sure that you're all aware that we're talking about household cleaners today and green cleaning. So in this workshop, we're going to highlight a little bit about the health and environmental concerns of using some of the commercial made cleaners, the standard ones you buy in the supermarket. And then we're also going to provide you some options to make your own green cleaning products. So we're excited because there's a really cool recipe booklet that you'll all receive at the end. So we'll email it to Shannon and then she can get that resource off to you. Okay, next slide. So for those of you that may not be familiar, the University of Maryland Extension, University of Maryland, we are with Extension, but our programs are open to everyone. So if we were doing this program in person, we've had this on our sign-in table so that you can see it. The print's really small, so we just highlighted the key parts on here on showing the fact that we are open to everyone. Okay, oh, Shauna, look at you. Okay, so this is us. So I'm Beverly Jackie. I'm a family and consumer science agent with the University of Maryland Extension. I'm also a registered dietitian, and I cover the counties of Cecil, Kent, and Queen Anne's.
I'm Shauna, and I'm also a family and consumer sciences agent, and I focus on nutrition, food safety, and physical activity. And the photo is actually a food safety training at a farm. I got to bike to it.
Okay, next slide. All right, so we have some learning objectives for you today. We're hoping that as we go through the slide presentation, you'll be able to, at the end of the session, name at least one possible harmful effect caused by using household cleaning products. And then on the other side, be able to identify a benefit of using green cleaning products. And then at the end, Shauna will be demonstrating how to make a cleaning product. So we're hoping that after you watch her do it, that you'll be able to take the recipes that you get and make one as well. Okay. So many of the cleaning products that we use on an everyday basis can actually be harmful to not only people, but to animals and also the environment. And this can occur during the manufacturing process, like for example, when cleaners are being made, or it could be, it can happen during when we're using them or disposing them as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about volatile organic compounds, which we refer to as VOCs. And these are actually gases that are emitted from certain solids or liquids. And VOCs include a variety of different chemicals that are mixed together to form these compounds. And some of them have short-term health effects or harmful effects, and some have long-term effects. Particularly, we look at phosphorus and nitrogen. I will comment here that phosphorus, when we talk about some of the products, there's one product in particular that was kind of zeroed out that has removed phosphorus from it. But when we think of products that have these VOCs, think of products that have strong odors. So does anyone want to, if you want to put in chat or if you want to unmute yourself, if you have that capability, can anyone think of a product that you might use? It doesn't have to necessarily be a household cleaner, but that has that very strong smell, which is what the VOCs actually are. I'll start you off. Like think of something like a paint stripper. So that's an example, not necessarily a cleaner, but something in our household. Anybody can think of anything else? How about just some of the cleaning supplies that you use? If you open up the cleaning supplies and there's strong smells, what about office equipment? Many of us are back into our offices and we don't use these anymore, but back in the day, there was something called a mimeograph machine that used to have this very strong smelling ink in it. And some people actually like the smell of that. Or go back to grade school, when maybe you were in art class and there were those markers that had that really strong smell. That's also VOCs. And then if anyone likes that new car smell, VOCs as well as that new carpet smell. So any of those smells that you're getting from these products are actually the VOCs. And even something that we might use every day, like an air freshener or a scented candle, that will actually emit some of the VOCs, depending on what they're made from, of course. And when I mentioned about phosphorus, so phosphorus is listed here. Phosphorus, because of its harmful effect, has been removed from a lot of laundry detergents, and most of them, I think, are phosphorus free at this point. Okay. When we change the photography machine cartridges, yeah, if that has a very strong scent, then that probably has VOCs in it as well. Okay, next slide. All right, so I'm just going to go through. I see one of our slides is one of our images is covering the slide. Missed that. Apologize for that. But I'm just going to go through some of the effects. There's some short-term effects of having exposure to these VOCs, and then there's some long-term effects. So some of the short-term effects might be something like allergies. So for example, when we're using a household cleaner and it comes in contact with our skin, it may cause a rash. Or if we're breathing it in and we're breathing in those fumes, it may cause an irritation in our mucous membrane. So that's kind of a benign, short-term effect. An asthma attack may not be so benign, but hopefully it's short-term, but that could be also triggered by anything caustic in fumes. It could be not only irritating to the nose, but also your throat and lungs. And then that causes difficulty for people with asthma to breathe. And then just for any of us, short-term respiratory distress. So for example, if you're working with a solution that has these very strong fumes and you're not working in a well-ventilated area, that can cause that, short-term respiratory distress. So usually if you remove yourself from that area or you ventilate well, you can avoid that, or the distress will go away. But some of the long-term ones are not that easy to remove. And with long-term, it usually occurs with not only it's a long-term effect, but it's also a long-term exposure. So some of the things that you see listed here are not going to occur, with just exposure a couple weeks or a couple months. This is going to be long-term, over years exposure to. So for example, there might be some blood disorders. There's been different types of anemia, particularly hemolytic anemia, which breaks down or kills the red blood cells. That can happen to long-term exposure to any household chemicals or some of the other ones that I mentioned that may have those VOCs in them. And then also organ systems and systems, like for example, if you think about your liver and your kidney, those are two organs that really filter things out of our body. So if they're filtering these compounds over time, it could cause damage to those cells in those two organs. And then also the endocrine system. Now the endocrine system, if we think about that, and the endocrine system actually regulates our body's hormones, and by releasing them into our bloodstream to keep us balanced. So when the system is disrupted, so if it's getting bombarded with some of these VOCs into our body and into the system, then our health can be negatively impacted because those hormones are not doing, what they're supposed to do. And then also there's been some evidence with reproductive system damage, and then some antibacterial resistance, meaning some of these bacteria actually form some resistance to some of the drugs that they're taking that are supposed to kill them off, and it actually doesn't work. And then last, but certainly not least, is cancer. Some of the exposure long-term can be very carcinogenic to our system. And I will say that they've done some research and they've pinpointed some chemicals. Now, hopefully we're not using these on a regular basis and every single day, but some of the big offenders are things like our toilet bowl cleaners and drain cleaners. So, think about that, but we're hopefully not using them every single day. And if we are, again, that ventilation, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, is so important. Okay, so next slide. So in addition to having impact on human health, and by the way, too, if you have animals, pets in your home, those effects that I just mentioned for humans can also occur with animals. So keep in mind, you want to keep your pet safe as well as us, as ourselves. But also, in addition to humans, there are also some environmental effects to consider when using some of these household cleaners. So let's think about the waterways for a minute. Most of you probably know that it's not a good practice to pour down chemicals or cleaners down the drain, because eventually, where are they going to go? They're going to get into our waterways at one point. And because we live in Maryland, we have this great, beautiful resource called the Chesapeake Bay. A lot of the tributaries throughout the state, through the watershed process, will drain into the bay. And so, if you think about that, you want to make sure that we're using less chemicals so it doesn't impact our waterways, because it's such a great natural resource for us. And then thinking about the waterways in addition to plant life, it can also impact plant life and what we would call, I guess, agriculture and aquaculture, for example. And again, that ties in with the Chesapeake Bay for us particularly. So I'm not from Maryland. So when we were preparing for this PowerPoint, and I've done this several times, I had to do some research, because one of the questions was, think back about what happened to the Chesapeake Bay in the 70s and 80s. So I know now what happened, but anyone here from Maryland want to chime in about what was going on with the Bay back in the 70s and 80s? It was a negative thing, by the way. It wasn't something that was good for the Bay. Okay, I'll let you know. So basically what was happening, there was a lot of runoff, and some of it was caused from agriculture, but some of it was caused from other areas. It was running off into the Bay, and a lot of nitrogen and phosphorus were getting into the Bay. It was killing off a lot of the plant life and marine life. So because of lots of efforts, and now we have a Restore the Bay campaign, the Bay has bounced back and is doing much, much better. But we have to keep an eye on it. We still want to make sure that our marine life is coming back and maintaining and even growing. For those of you are not familiar, Maryland is known for their amazing blue crabs, and their other marine life as well, and their oyster beds. So we want to make sure that we have a continuous supply of that as well. And so and also at that time too, there was a lot of research going on back in the 70s and 80s, and there was an article that a research article that showed that they were studying some of the fish and the impact that this nitrogen and phosphorus was having on the fish at the time. And they actually found some male fish, bass fish in particular, that were growing ovaries and had eggs inside their bodies, which was not a thing for male fish to do, obviously. So fortunately, a lot of the restoration efforts have cleaned up the Bay, but there's always work to do, and we always want to maintain it so it is healthy. And then last but not least, these chemicals also have an impact and can cause air pollution. So if we think about it, air pollution, we think of car exhaust, we think of what emits out of smokestacks and so forth, but it also can be linked to the water supply. So if water is contaminated and has these chemicals in it and evaporates into the air, it can sometimes take the chemicals with it. And then the chemicals are in the air, and then we're breathing them in. And again, not healthy for the general population, but especially not healthy for people who have, respiratory issues. Okay, next slide, please. All right. So regardless of what type of products we're going to use, because as I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about, we're talking about the household products we're using now, and then whether we're going to purchase the benefits of purchasing green products, or if we're going to make our own. It's very important that you have you have the tools and know how to store them properly. So thinking about, small children, animals, they can't read, they're at, ground level. So you want to make sure that if you're storing them in cabinets, like under your sink or just, cabinets in general that are low, you want to make sure you have child-proof latches on any of those cabinets, or you want to store them very high so that children and animals can't reach them. To children and pets, some of these chemicals or some of these cleaning products or things that we use, they're pretty colors, they're vibrant. They may mistake them as food or maybe toys to play with, and they put them in their mouths. And then, of course, there could be some devastating consequences because of that. So that's the one thing you want to make sure of, finding a good place to store them. And I like this image on the slide here, which basically it shows that someone purchased a over-the-door shoe holder, and that instead of putting shoes in those slots, they're putting their chemicals, and it's still high enough that if a child happens to be able to open the door, they can't reach them. So you have that level of being higher and then being behind a door that hopefully that they can't reach. So just a good idea of one idea that you can use. Also, you want to make sure that you keep all the labels on there so you know what the products are. So if you are purchasing something and making it from a concentrate, make sure it's labeled, and so that you know what it is, or the next person that comes along in your household that knows what it is. Avoid mixing chemicals as well, or different cleaners, because sometimes the different elements or substances in those cleaners may not get along well, or may cause chemical reactions that can be very harmful. And as I mentioned earlier, so important to ventilate, especially if you're using something like an oven cleaner or some of those toilet bowl cleaners that I mentioned earlier. And then just make sure that if you are cleaning, you want to, and you're cleaning your surface, also make sure you give it an extra wipe to remove any residue that might be left from the cleaner. Okay, next slide. All right, so now we know a little bit about the household cleaners that are commercially sold. And if you're thinking that hasn't kind of given you pause to think about going another route, then we're going to talk a little bit about why go green. So first of all, this is one way that you can limit using some of those household products that may have some of those harmful ingredients in them. So an environmentally friendly or greener product is generally a good solution, which is safer for humans and animals, as I mentioned, and of course, a lesser negative impact on the environment. So let's talk a little bit about how environmentally friendly these products can be. So if you're using something that doesn't have any of those VOCs, they may have, that means that you're getting less of that into your breathing air in your household, and that can help reduce health benefits as opposed to using some of the traditional ones that have those stronger scents. And then also you might be able to use less of it, especially if you see what we're going to show you at the end in terms of how little product or ingredient you can use to make a green product and still have the same outcome and benefits that some of the household cleaners have. Also, think about it increases household safety. You're using more natural ingredients as opposed to having some of those harmful ingredients around the household. And then they tend to be less abrasive as well, so that they protect your countertops or the surfaces that you want to clean. Definitely could be a money saver, and we'll share a little bit about that when we get to the green cleaning products that you're going to make. And then, as I mentioned, it can help that earth stay healthier. And then last but not least, it can save on some natural resources by not necessarily, thinking about the what goes into manufacturing some of these products and the resources that are used to make them. Okay. So if you decide that you want to look at some green cleaning products that are available on the market, this is what you want to look for. So you want to look for what they call third-party certifications. And it's a really valuable resource because seeing these labels helps you choose a green cleaning product that weeds out products that are simply call themselves green, maybe the color green, but not are necessarily green, meaning that they meet the guidelines that these third-party certifications go through for their products. So I'll just go through them quickly, and I'll give you just a couple examples of where you might find them. But there might be other ones out there, but these are the three key ones. And there's actually an organization called the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges, and they recommend these three because they've been around the longest, and they have health promoting criteria, and they are also regulated and respected by other third-party organizations as well. So the first one is called the Green Seal, and that's an independent nonprofit organization that uses science-based testing to identify sustainable products. So in addition to health and in the environment, this is one of the main third-party certifications. So the Green Seal also tests for performance and quality. So you might see this seal on some personal care products, paint, light bulbs, some institutional cleaners, hand soaps, paper products, and even some floor care products. The second one is called the EPA Safer Choice. Now, this is the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Safer Choice label, which indicates that every ingredient has been through the EPA review. And a product is only allowed to carry this label if these ingredients are among the safest in the class and as determined by the EPA. So this product can be found on thousands of products out on the market, including institutional and household ones. Examples of products there, again, hand soaps, laundry detergents, and some floor care products as well. Excuse me. And the third label is what is called the UL Eco Logo. And this is found in, well, this product, first of all, indicates that the product has undergone very rigorous scientific testing to prove its compliance with the third-party environmental performance standards. So all of these go through that third party. It's because they want to meet those environmental standards. But this is the last one. It has that label on that. And this one you're going to find on a lot of products as well. Anything from laundry detergents, hand soaps, paper products, including bathroom tissues and napkins, industrial wipes, and even trash can liners. Again, the Environmental Working Group website here is a good place to find a lot of additional safety information on our various cleaning products. So we will provide you with these slides. And if you open them up, you should be able to click on that and get to the website. If not, you can just put this in your browser and it'll take it to you. Okay, so next slide, please. Oh, there it is. I'm sorry. So in addition to looking for those labels on green products, you also want to make sure that the products that you're looking at are also non-toxic, meaning not poisonous or toxic to someone. And it usually have that skull and crossbones on there. Make sure that it's biodegradable. That means that, you know, it's able to be decomposed and then go back into the environment. Phosphate free, which again, a lot of them are, especially the laundry detergents. If you can find a container that's recyclable, even better, because that means less waste, better for the environment. Something that has natural fragrances as opposed to those synthetic fragrances that will have those VOCs in them. And then when possible, try to find things that don't have dyes in them. You know, so if you can find a cleaner that's just clear, like for example, there's green cleaners out there that are actually green. It's just dye. So if you can find a cleaner that's clear, that's not using dye, that's better. And then also if you find other cleaners that maybe contain very little hypochlorite, which is, I guess that's found in bleaching and disinfecting. And Sean will be able to provide us a little bit more information on that. So now that we identified how to find green cleaning products on the market, and then what also to look for, even if you're not using green cleaning, to look for some of these items, Sean is going to take us through a little discussion about the differences between cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting, which will help you identify which products you need to use, as well as go through some tips on do-it-yourself cleaners.
Great, thank you, Beverly.
You're welcome.
So when we're thinking about green cleaning and thinking about the definitions of what cleaning is really just the removal of any sort of visual debris. Typically, when you think cleaning, you're cleaning with soap as a detergent, water. And in terms of a public health framework, cleaning doesn't do anything in terms of killing any sort of pathogen like bacteria or viruses. That would be a public health concern. When we think of sanitizing, sanitizing is actually going to introduce a chemical or even heat to actually start killing pathogens of public health concern. And typically when we're thinking about maybe food, especially for this lecture series, at most, all you need to do as it relates to food is clean and sanitize when possible. Same thing in your own personal homes. Most of you are going to be doing some sort of cleaning of countertops, cooking equipment, and then sometimes you might be sanitizing. For example, maybe you have a sanitizing cycle in your dishwasher that you're able to complete. And in terms of disinfecting, you typically aren't going to see the need for disinfecting in your food kind of businesses, whether you're a producer or manufacturing food in that sense. We did see the word disinfect a lot throughout COVID. And just so you can look at the photos, this one's nice because it does talk about how cleaning just removes dirt and debris, but you still have that bacteria, viruses, and other sort of pathogens that still remain. Sanitizing is when you're going to start destroying or killing, injuring some of those pathogens of public health concern. And then disinfecting, you're going to kill even more bacteria or viruses. When we are thinking about cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting, the thing to remember is that the concentration of what you're using, the contact time, so how long that solution is sitting on a countertop or maybe a stainless steel surface, as well as the temperature of your ingredients can be important. So read the directions, like Beverly mentioned, again, and then also if you do wind up using something like a chemical sanitizer, like chlorine bleach or something else for ag production or food manufacturing, just read the label and make sure that you're following the directions or your employees are following the directions. So let's take a look about in your kitchen. In your kitchen, most of us are going to have some sort of baking soda. You might have the deodorizer, cleaner, laundry, mild abrasives, and then you'll also see that you have oftentimes in your kitchen white vinegar, and that's going to be great for helping to clean your showers, tubs, toilet bowls, things of that nature. It is important to note that if you are thinking about cleaning your home refrigerator, pull out the manufacturer instructions. We see a lot newer refrigerators out there, and you might find in the manual that you shouldn't be using something like a baking soda because even baking soda might be too strong of an abrasive for cleaning the surface of your refrigerator, freezer, whether it's inside the unit or the exterior. And even for some of the refrigerators that might have a stainless steel exterior, make sure that you're choosing the right green cleaning ingredients for that type of surface. Some things to note when you are looking at something like white vinegar, especially for your shower tubs and sinks. The general rule of thumb or best practices to make it an effective cleaner is that you would actually want to warm the vinegar, put it in a spray bottle, and then let it sit for 10 to 15 minutes. So in this instance, we're seeing that it's important in terms of the concentration. We're not watering down the white vinegar, we're using its full strength at 5% acidity. We see that the contact time of that solution is important. So letting that vinegar sit on the surface of your shower, tub, or sink for 10 to 15 minutes. And then again, the temperature. The best practice here is warming the vinegar. So I imagine that you'd be warming the vinegar to no more than 130 degrees Fahrenheit in this situation. Just for an example, windows. Some of us might be thinking about cleaning some windows over the long weekend. And so you would mix about a quarter cup of vinegar with 1 quart of water and spray on for a glass cleaner. So here we see an example where we're using a diluted amount of white vinegar. We see that in terms of the temperature, it doesn't matter what the vinegar or the water is, and that there's no specification for that contact time. So different surfaces that you're cleaning might require a temperature, might require a contact time, it might require a concentration. So again, just going back to baking soda, again, it's still considered a mild abrasive, so it's really great for helping to remove burnt foods, whether it's in your oven, maybe a grill, things of that nature. And both baking soda and white vinegar are great to help with laundry. So in terms of making your own do-it-yourself recipe, we see a couple of options here. And we also see in the box below some general purposes or uses that you could use your DIY recipe. And again, we'll make sure that we get the booklet out to you after the presentation. So one of the things to highlight is you see as an ingredient under the all-purpose one, washing soda. So washing soda is also known as sodium carbonate or soda ash. It's a natural cleaner and a powerful water softener. It's also used to remove a lot of stubborn stains from laundry, and it's essentially a component in more homemade laundry detergents, such as borax. So if you actually looked at the ingredient list of a borax container the next time you go grocery shopping, or if you have it at home, you'll see that borax somewhere in that packaging is going to talk about sodium borate. So sodium borate, sodium tetraborate, or disodium tetraborate is going to be that white powdery substance, and it's going to be widely used in many household cleaners, and it helps boost the laundry detergent effectiveness. Another thing too that you might see right below that is the ingredient vegetable oil. So vegetable oil-based liquid soap is going to be a plant-based soap made from vegetable oil. So good examples of these vegetable oil-based bases are olive oil, coconut, palm, or any other plant-based oil. So then again, the alternative would be some sort of animal fat-based oil. So lastly, I just wanted to point out an example of a vegetable-based soap is Castile soap that you might see out in the markets. For green cleaning agents, you see alkalis up top and acids. So in terms of we'll start with acids because we might be a little bit more familiar with acids like vinegar, which you might see seen written as acetic acid, or even lemon juice as a citric acid. These types of acids are really great to remove mineral deposits like limescale or rust stains from sinks or glassware. Both acetic acid and citric acid are weak from a chemistry standpoint. So sodium bisulfate, hydrochloric acid, and sulfuric acid are going to be stronger acids that are sometimes included in toilet cleaners. So if you ever wanted to kind of see a comparison and get an idea what active ingredients are, feel free to pick up maybe a commercial toilet bowl cleaner and just see if any of these words, you can find them in the packaging. And then in terms of your alkalis, so kind of going away from those acidic items, uh, alkalis such as baking soda or sodium bicarbonate is going to be a weak base when we're thinking about chemistry. And again, something like your baking soda is going to be useful for cleaning glass as well as wall tiles. Chlorine bleach is also an alkaline solution of sodium hypochlorite dissolved in water. It's used to clean and whiten fabrics as well as surfaces, and is also an effective disinfectant. So if you were looking to use a chlorine bleach as a sanitizer or a disinfectant, you would want to read the label and make sure you're mixing the appropriate amount of liquid chlorine bleach to the proper amount of water. And again, these are some great ways to help remove stains, unclog drains, and remove some of the greasy buildup on pots and pans. Other green cleaning agents are going to be surfactants, and you also see abrasives here. So surfactant agents are going to help grab hold of dirt and take it away from the items being cleaned. You'll find them in soaps and detergents. Most are petroleum based, therefore you won't, they wouldn't be considered green or environmentally friendly products. Commercially made environmentally friendly products and homemade cleaning products usually contain vegetable oil. Coconut oil is also can be used instead of a petroleum product. And then here in terms of your abrasives, these agents are going to help scour off dirt, grease, or other residue. So you might have used steel wool pads or plastic or nylon pads in the past, or even currently. And you can see some photos of both styles here. So again, when you're thinking about disinfectants and chlorine bleach, again, the idea is to kill microorganisms on surfaces, especially ones of public health concern. So the types of chlorine bleach, or the types of disinfectants and bleaches you might see out in the market are those chlorine bleaches, hydrogen peroxide, and sodium perborate. A lot of times you can use sodium peroxide at 3% as an effective sanitizer. So again, sanitizers are going to be a little bit less kill than a disinfectant. Similarly, in terms of chlorine bleach, you're going to be diluting that bleach to a certain level, whereas a disinfectant, you're going to have a much larger concentration of chlorine bleach to water mixed together. So we do know that in terms of something being called a sanitizer, or not necessarily that, but the household cleaners that make claims about killing germs like a sanitizer or a disinfectant or anything that might have antimicrobial property is going to need to meet EPA standards. So some of the takeaway points here is making sure that you're keeping your apartment or house clean. Doesn't have to cost a lot of money. A lot of the ingredients that we talked about, if you've gone grocery shopping more recently, you can picture that a box of baking soda or even a gallon of white vinegar isn't going to be a huge cost compared to some of the other pre-made solutions. You also really want to make sure that you read labels on your commercial cleaning products so that they're used correctly. And Beverly pointed out some of the third-party labels that you'll want to look for. Lastly, some commercial household cleaning products are labeled green, but they still may contain ingredients that might not be as clean as we're hoping or green as we're hoping. So with that, let's see, we're going to transition into an activity. So we're actually going to make one of these cleaners. All right. Any questions before I set up with the mixing of our DIY cleaner? Okay. So one of the things that's always good to do is just measure out your ingredients ahead of time, just like if you're making a recipe at home. So for this one, I have our spray bottle. I actually put in the amount of, let's see. Oh, okay, sorry. So we're going to be making the all-purpose cleaner. Because this is only a 16-ounce spray bottle, I decided that we were going to make this recipe and have it. So for this, I already put in a 1/4 teaspoon of our vegetable-based oil that's already in here. I have a funnel, so things are a little bit neater in terms of pouring. So I'll stick that in here. I measured out the 1/4 teaspoon of washing soda, so that's going to go in. We have, for this recipe, a 1.5 tablespoons of 5% acidic vinegar. I'll give that a stir. And then we have our 1 cup of hot water. And while I was talking to Beverly, I was like, oh, does the water need to be hot all the time when I use this spray? And she said, no, the hot water is really just going to help make sure that everything gets dissolved as needed. So then, let's see, I did not do a good job pouring, so we have a little extra bubbling action going on, but since we're cleaning, that's all right. So if you're a better pourer than me, tilt the funnel and just pour the water right down the side gently. So pouring it right down the side gently versus what I did, which was more of a motion. Okay, so since it is foaming a little bit, we'll just keep going with this. We'll close it down, turn it, got my cloth. Another important thing that you'll want to have on hand is a waterproof pen. So you can say and label, right? Labeling's important. All-purpose cleaner. Oh, and what to clean. So let me take a little spray. It didn't mention any sort of how long contact time, but take our towel and just clean up where I've been sitting and working today. All right.
So
Any
Shauna,
questions?
actually what happened with the foaming was like chemistry 101, right? Mixing an acid and a base together. So the acid with the vinegar and the base, the baking soda. I have to say, so I have a tea kettle at home that gets like stains on the outside. So that's exactly what I do. I put like a paste of baking soda on the outside where it's like stained and I want to clean off. And then I just pour little drops of vinegar on top of it. And then I have a cloth ready to wipe it. And it doesn't foam up that way, but it causes that reaction. That's the reaction that actually helps with the cleaning. Okay. So just to wrap up, I just want to mention here that, making a switch to using all household cleaners commercially made to maybe starting off with some green cleaning. It's great for the environment. It also kind of makes you feel good too, knowing that you're doing your part. But you don't have to change everything at once. Please, the takeaway is not to throw everything out in your house that you commercially bought and turned green all of a sudden. Take it in steps. Look at what cleaners that you might want to try the recipes for, see how they work for you, and then you can build on from there. So if anybody has any questions, we are available. I guess I'd like to hear from anyone. Is anyone already doing some green cleaning? Let's see, I don't see anybody. No.
I have a question.
I'm sorry.
I have a question.
Sure.
How with disposal of things that are like harmful if we cannot do it? Because like, you know, you get conscious and you have that bottle half of the way that you decide not to use, but I have it there for like a little while and I just want to see it gone, but I'm conscious because like I live in a rural area